Well, hello, my friends, and welcome once again to the Romano Report podcast. Today is Friday, September 5th, and I've got a lot to talk about, so I'm going to be moving through some things pretty quickly here today. There's been a lot of news over the last week that I have not been able to get to, so we're going to get to a bunch of it here. And I'd like to begin by talking about someone who really is a hero, a courageous person in a time when there is very little courage. I think when the history of this period is written, one of the things that will be talked about over and over again is the cowardice. Because cowardice is what has led us to this position. The cowardice of so many people in positions of authority who could have stopped this. They fail to, for no other reason but then they are complete and total cowards. And I'm going to be talking about that more because there's a couple of cowards in particular I want to talk about. But I want to begin by praising someone who has shown complete and total courage, and that is E. Jean Carroll. She is the woman who sued successfully Donald Trump. Donald Trump sexually abused her and then defamed her, lied about her. She sued him successfully. Now, I say sexual abuse because he was found liable for sexual abuse. But I want to make clear, what Donald Trump did to E. Jean Carroll is considered by most people, in just common use of the word, to be rape. And that is exactly what the judge who oversaw that case said in a written opinion. That what Donald Trump was found liable by a unanimous jury for having done to E. Jean Carroll is commonly referred to as rape. He digitally penetrated her by force against her will. That is rape. Now, you'll recall that there was some controversy about this a while back when George Stephanopoulos of ABC referred to Donald Trump as having been found liable for rape. That is, of course, technically not accurate because in the state of New York, what he did is referred to as sexual abuse. And so Trump sued ABC because he sued them for defamation for Stephanopoulos referring to it as rape. They settled, which is ridiculous. There's not a chance in hell that Donald Trump would have won that lawsuit. But of course, this is exactly what he does time and time again. He files frivolous lawsuits to make these media outlets and other institutions bend to his will and to cover him in a way that he wants to be covered. And they give in because, again, cowardice. Anyway, E. Jean Carroll was abused by Donald Trump. Some would say raped by Donald Trump. And she fought back. And she is a hero. And she has a new documentary out. Well, not out. It's, I guess it's been made. And there's a piece in Variety about this. The title, E. Jean Carroll hopes her explosive Telluride doc will, quote, finish off Donald Trump and that potential buyers won't fear president's wrath. Godspeed to her in this effort. I hope she finds a buyer for this documentary, and I hope it does finish him off. Looking forward to that. Anyway, E. Jean Carroll, hero. Now, let's move on to Donald Trump being the lawless thug authoritarian that he is. Here was some news from earlier this week, Trump can't use National Guard or the military in California to enforce laws. This was the ruling of a federal district judge. And since that ruling came out, the city of Washington, D.C. has also filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump for the deployment of the National Guard for law enforcement purposes. Now, the judge here, Judge Breyer, in ruling that Donald Trump's use of the National Guard and other branches of the military in, I believe it was the Marines he sent in there to California, to enforce the law was illegal. Because we have a federal statute on this, and that's called the Posse Comitatus Act, which expressly prohibits a president from using the military for domestic law enforcement. And that's exactly what Donald Trump used them for in California and what he is currently using them for in Washington. He's also using them in Washington to pick up leaves and garbage and that kind of crap, and just to walk around in circles on the National Mall. Most of it is for show, although they are doing some things, but a lot of it is for show. And you can't use them for that either. Anyway, maybe you can use them for show, but you can't use them you shouldn't use them for show. But I don't know that there is a federal statute prohibiting a president from using the military for show, and there isn't. But there is one that says you can't use them for domestic law enforcement, and that's what he is ostensibly using them for in California and in Washington, and what he has been threatening to use them for in Chicago. Okay, I am really being distracted. I've got like a little friggin' spider walking around my camera over here, and he's really distracting and fast too. I don't think I'm going to get that little fucker. Anyway, and by the way, I am one who I do not kill bugs I find in my house for the most part. I capture them and I put them outside. I'm a softie that way. And so I would not kill this spider, but I would like him to get the hell off of my camera. But anyway, no reasoning with spiders. Where was I going with this? Okay, so that's what he's using the military for domestic law enforcement in California and Washington. He's threatening it in Chicago and New York City and Baltimore. However, this leads me to another issue I want to talk about. He may be backing down on all of that. See, the thing about a bully, and Donald Trump is a bully, he's an insecure, cowardly little bitch of a bully. But like all bullies, they quickly back down when you punch them in the face, or even if you just stand up to them. And it appears that Donald Trump is backing down. We'll see. Maybe he'll actually go through with it, but it looks like he may be backing down on his threat to send the military into Chicago, because J.B. Pritzker, as you know, I guess it was it last week, that he held a press conference and he pushed back hard on Donald Trump. He made it clear there is no reason for the military here. We do not want the military here, and Donald Trump stay the hell out of Chicago. So he wasn't putting up with it. He wasn't acquiescing. He wasn't cowering in fear, as so many others have done up until now. And by the way, we are finally starting to see some backbone, which is a good thing. J.B. Pritzker is showing backbone. Gavin Newsom, I'm friggin' loving what he's doing, mocking Donald Trump. I think it's fantastic. I have long advocated for the use of mockery in dealing with this guy. Mockery, I think, is the absolute best way to respond to him. Make fun of this guy. And my God, if there was ever in history a political figure that is more easily mocked than this friggin' buffoon, from top to bottom, this guy is so easy to mock. First of all, just look at him. He is the most clownish person I think maybe ever to have lived. Look at him. And they exalt him as this alpha male. Right? They have to pretend he's something that he's not. They create this myth of Donald Trump. You know, they create these digital friggin' AI images of Donald Trump riding a friggin' T-Rex with his shirt off and rippling muscles, and he's got a friggin' AR-15 in one hand and the American flag in the other, and, you know, he is the savior and all this stuff. It's ridiculous. And, of course, he's always got that perfect mane of flowing hair, right? The truth is the exact opposite. This guy is the most out of shape, and I normally don't body shame people, but this man body shames everyone. I mean, look what he does with Chris Christie, J.B. Pritzker. This guy is going to comment on the way other people look? This flat, fat, bloated, Oompa Loompa looking with this friggin' hair. His hair is so ridiculous, he's got to wear that stupid MAGA hat. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on just making fun of Donald Trump. The point is, if anyone in history was easy to mock, it's Donald Trump. Mock this man. You know, his cult, you know, they want to follow a strong man, an alpha male. That's why they create all this bullshit about him. The truth is the exact opposite. Laugh at this guy. They don't want to follow a leader who is weak and so easily made fun of and is the butt of constant jokes and is constantly mocked by their political opponents. What they love about Donald Trump is when he makes people, you know, like lose their mind, like, or, you know, react angrily to what he does. That's what they love. Owning the libs, right? They love that shit. They don't like it when you laugh at him. Laugh at him. Laugh at him. Laugh at them. Mock them. And that's what Gavin Newsom is doing so wonderfully, in my opinion. Anyway, back to Donald Trump. Taco Trump appearing to taco yet again, this time on his threat to send the military into Chicago. And it's because J.B. Pritzker is standing up and saying, no, bullshit, you ain't coming into Chicago. And keep in mind, he's got no legal authority to do it whatsoever. First of all, as Judge Breyer in this opinion says, the Posse Comitatus Act strictly prohibits it. You cannot use the military for domestic law enforcement. The only exceptions to that are to be found like in the Insurrection Act. But there's only certain circumstances under which you can invoke the Insurrection Act to use the military. First is if a state requests the assistance of the federal government. J.B. Pritzker, in that press conference made clear, we don't want any help. We don't need it. We don't want it. We are not asking for it. In fact, we're explicitly telling you stay the hell out of Illinois and specifically Chicago. So that first circumstances in which a president can invoke the Insurrection Act, blown out of the water by J.B. Pritzker. Okay, it's not being requested. So there's only two others. First is if there is an insurrection happening in the state against the federal government. Well, that's not the case. There's no insurrection against the federal government that would allow Trump to deploy the military. In fact, the only... I just bit the hell out of my lip. How the freak did I do that? Damn, that hurt. Okay, I'm better. Jeez. You would think, you know, I've had a lot of practice with chewing and speaking, because I'll do that every once in a while. I'm sure you do it too sometimes. You'll be eating and all of a sudden, damn it, oh, I bit the fuck out of my lip. And the worst is when you like draw blood. How does that happen? Right? I've got over 50 years of practice eating and speaking, and somehow I just bit my lip in the middle of a fucking podcast. What the hell's wrong with me? All right. Oh yeah, Insurrection Act. Okay, so there's no insurrection. The only insurrection in recent memory that I can think of, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the insurrection incited by and organized by Donald Trump against the federal government. But there certainly isn't an insurrection taking place anywhere in the country that would authorize Trump to use the military. So that isn't available to him. That set of circumstances doesn't exist. Finally, if there is if the federal government is being prevented in a state from enforcing federal law. That's the only other way you can use the military, because the president has the right and the authority to enforce federal law. And if federal law enforcement agencies, for some reason, are unable, there's not enough force, or they're being prevented in some way, then the president can use the military to enforce federal law. That's what he claimed that he was using the military in California for, but everybody saw right through that. There was no need for it. In fact, the judge in that case cited statements from Donald Trump and his drunken defense secretary, or maybe he's war secretary by now, because, Trump is illegally changing the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War because it makes him sound real tough, Wasn't he supposed to be the peace president? Isn't that what he was running on? Now he wants to be seen as the war president. And he's a real tough guy, murdering Venezuelans on a boat in international waters, right? Real tough wartime president. By the way, I kind of went off earlier today. I did a video that I posted to the main channel, the Romano Report. I'll put a link in the show notes below if I remember to. Anyway, I dealt just with Donald Trump's illegal killing, otherwise referred to as murder, of 11 Venezuelan nationals. Yet another crime for which he should be impeached, removed from office, and prosecuted. Anyway, check that out. But Judge Breyer in California has, in his opinion, cited statements from Donald Trump and his drunken, Pete Kegsbreath, defense secretary, their own statements as proof that the reasons they are deploying the military, or they did to California, were illegal. And see, that's the thing about Donald Trump and Kegsbreath and so many of the others in his administration. They're all idiots, or nearly all of them. There are some people who aren't idiots. But the public-facing ones, Pete Kegsbreath, Kristi Noem, these kinds of people. Howard Lutnick, God's sakes. They're all so fucking stupid. And of course, Donald Trump, the ringleader of this stupid circus, they're so stupid, they don't even realize that their statements of bravado, all these things that they're so proud of saying, can be used in evidence against them when their illegal actions are challenged. And by the way, if we weren't surrounded by so many blithering idiots in this country, and Donald Trump was not elected as a result of that, and he would have gone on trial for his crimes. In fact, right about now, probably he'd be on trial in Judge Chutkin's court for the insurrection-related crimes. Anyway, certainly in that case for sure. And really in all of the cases, so much of the evidence that probably would have been offered against Donald Trump would have been his own statements. There would have been so many tweets and things he said in interviews and things he said at his little cult rallies. I mean, so many things that he said just were so incriminating. But he's an idiot. He didn't know what the hell he was saying, and he is lucky as hell that this country is as breathtakingly stupid as it is. Because only a country this stupid would elect Donald Trump, or anyone like Donald Trump. But, he's lucky. Anyway, what else was I going to say here? Oh yeah, going back to Chicago and Donald Trump tacoing out. So, J.B. Pritzker is standing up. The law is clearly not on Donald Trump's side. He has absolutely no authority to send the military into Chicago, to deploy the National Guard for law enforcement purposes. We have Judge Breyer ruling that way in California. The exact same legal arguments would apply to him doing it in Chicago as well, or anywhere else. But now we have Washington, D.C., filing a lawsuit this week against Donald Trump, claiming the same thing, that his deployment of the National Guard in Washington was illegal, and I believe that it was. Now, he has a lot more authority in Washington because it's a federal district as opposed to a state. But he still, the Posse Comitatus Act still applies. And he still cannot use the military, even in Washington, D.C., for domestic law enforcement. Now, he does have authority, and he has statutory authority to federalize to take over the D.C. Metropolitan Police. That part of it, he probably has authority to do. But using the National Guard to enforce, for law enforcement purposes, even in Washington, he doesn't. Now, if he wants to keep them there picking up trash and raking leaves and shit, I guess he could probably do that, but they can't do law enforcement. And so that's the basis of that lawsuit. And so, he's got the law against him. He's already got this ruling. And he's got opposition, political opposition, somebody standing up to the bully in the form of J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois. So that's the thing. When you stand up to this criminal, oftentimes, and usually more often than not, he folds. Especially when the law's not on his side and people aren't going to stand by and take it. And so you have that. On top of that, I'm also seeing some maggots turn against him, like influential maggots. And I'm gonna play this video clip in another video I'm planning to do. But I came across a video clip this morning of Megyn Kelly, the detestable Megyn Kelly, and she was talking about Trump threatening to send the military into Chicago. And she was telling her MAGA audience that that's illegal, that Trump has no authority to do it. And she's hoping, and she was basically essentially begging Trump not to do it. She's like, please don't do it. Please don't make me side with J.B. Pritzker, because there's no authority to do it. And Megyn Kelly's a lawyer, and she's not stupid. She just, she's playing her role, which I don't understand. Megyn Kelly, at least at one time, was pretty well respected. Remember, she was the one that Donald Trump attacked during the primaries back in 2016. Wasn't it she that he accused of bleeding from different parts? Because she moderated a debate with the Republican presidential candidates. And she was asking him tough questions, and he lashed out at her, and then he said she was bleeding from her eyes and her ears and other parts. Remember all that? I think that was Megyn Kelly. Anyway, and she got millions, I believe, in a settlement from, was it NBC that she worked for briefly? And they got rid of her, and they had to pay her out her contract, which was worth millions. I mean, she's got a shit ton of cash. She doesn't need to do this, right? She doesn't have to play stupid for the Trump cult and say such. Anyway, but at least in this instance, she's actually saying the right thing here, and so I think it's notable. And this video that I'm planning on doing, where I'm going to play that video clip of her, there's a lot of MAGAs who are now beginning to wake up to a lot of the things that Donald Trump is now doing. And just yesterday we learned that he is considering trying to strip Second Amendment rights from transgender Americans. And while I'm sure a lot of the cult will cheer that, because they cheer anything he does, number one, and number two, they hate transgender people. It's one of the groups that they hate. So, if you're going to be cruel to them, take away their rights, they will cheer that. But a lot of these MAGAs, especially the ones for whom their gun rights are real important, the My Guns crowd, they're angry. They can see, look, if Donald Trump can, by dictate, strip this group of Americans of their right to keep and bear arms, then the next president can do it to us, is what they're thinking. If there's a Democrat president, they can do it to us and take away our guns. They still haven't, put two and two together that they're eventually coming for your guns too, maggots. Trump is coming for you too. He's starting with marginalized groups that you hate, but he's eventually going to get around to disarming you too. If he is successful in doing what he wants to do and be a dictator for life, which I'm sure he wants to do, he's going to disarm the entire population. You're not getting out of this with your guns, MAGA, just so you know. Anyway, so the point is, Megyn Kelly was speaking out against the Chicago stuff, so I think that Taco Trump is actually going to completely taco out of this. And more evidence of that, by the way. Do I have this article pulled up? No, I don't. But anyway, it's being reported that Trump is actually preparing now to flood the city of Chicago with ICE. Not with the military, not with the National Guard, but with ICE. And hey, why not? It's his own personal army. They haven't, hired as many people as they're going to. This big, beautiful bill just passed, and which is allowing Donald Trump to turn ICE into his own personal army to use against the American people. The problem is that he's having a hard time hiring soldiers for his own little personal thug army, and they're going to great lengths to try to induce people, including raising the age limit for people to be able to join ICE. That's why you have what's that loser's name? The guy who played Superman like 30 years ago and hasn't been relevant since. Oh, Dean Cain. That's why he's joining ICE. Have you seen some of these cringy videos of Superman training to be an ICE agent? Oh, the spider's back. Anyway, is that a spider? Oh, whatever. It's really embarrassing. I know he thinks he probably looks like a tough guy, but yeah, I'd rethink this, Dean. Anyway, so looks like he's gearing up to send a bunch of ICE agents into Chicago, which he can do, okay? It's not legal for him to send the military or deploy the National Guard to do it, but he can deploy ICE. ICE is a domestic law enforcement agency, and so he can send ICE to do it, but there's only certain things he can do legally with ICE. He can only send ICE to enforce federal law. And I'm pretty sure that, ICE is immigration and customs enforcement, right? So they don't have, I don't believe, they don't just have broad law enforcement jurisdiction to enforce all federal law. Maybe they do. I'm not exactly for sure on that. But they're primarily tasked with enforcing immigration and customs law, right? You can't just send them there to just... that's what the FBI is for, to general federal law enforcement. But he's sending a bunch of ICE agents there. And so if he uses them for any purposes that are not lawful, then he's going to have a problem there too. And I hope that J.B. Pritzker is ready to run into court to block that. Because, for example, the federal government, ICE, FBI, doesn't matter what law enforcement agency we're talking about, federal law enforcement only has authority to enforce federal law. Now, most criminal laws in this country are state laws, not federal law. The overwhelming majority of crimes that are prosecuted in this country are prosecuted at the state level. There's really not a lot of federal crimes. Unless you are on federal property, then there's not a lot of federal crimes out there. So it's overwhelmingly state laws that are relevant to law enforcement. And Donald Trump, as president of the United States, not the governor of a state, has no authority to enforce state law. And so that's what he's talking about when he's going into when he's threatening to go into Chicago, or what he's doing in Washington. But again, federal district. Anyway, he's talking about crime generally speaking. Oh, crime is a big problem here. Crime is a big problem there. What crimes are you referring to, jackass? If we're just talking about general crimes, we're overwhelmingly talking about state-level crimes, which he has no authority to do a damn thing about, except in Washington, D.C., to a limited extent. So, it would be nice, by the way, if the media actually made that distinction in their reporting, explained that sort of thing, But the problem is a lot of these people in the media have no idea themselves. I mean, think about it. Who are most of these media people? Most of them went to college for journalism, right? Or communications. And then they get out and they get their first job at some local thing. Then they work their way up. They finally get into the national media. But do they have any subject matter expertise for the most part? These no! They know what the fuck they're talking about. So when we're talking about issues like this, we're talking about some complicated legal and constitutional issues. We have the intersection of constitutional issues. We have, Article 1 versus Article 2. We've got the 10th Amendment with federalism and what's this, the state's role in our federal system and what can the president do in a state? What can't he do? Then we have statutes on this stuff. Do you think these friggin' talking heads in the media know anything about this stuff? No. And so I'm not surprised that they do such a shit job of explaining any of this stuff. And when you watch, I was watching cable news the other night, which I try not to do very often, but there was nothing on TV. I was flipping around, and I think, it was CNN. Oh my God. This panel show with Abby Phillip, where is Scott Jennings still on that show? Oh my God, I can't stand that friggin' guy. Anyway, I'm listening. I was only on the station for a few minutes. I had to get the hell off of there. I'm listening to two idiots yell. They're both talking over each other. I could barely understand a word that either one of them are saying because they're both yelling at each other at the same time. You have, one was a MAGA cultist just making excuses for Trump. Another one was obviously not a MAGA cultist, but neither one knew what the hell they were talking about. And so you have two people really wound up, just yelling at each other, passionately arguing over an issue that neither one had any fucking idea what they were talking about. Neither one understood the issue at all, yet they just couldn't be more passionate about the issue and sure of their own positions. It was a constitutional, it had a constitutional dimension, which clearly neither one of them understood. And so two complete ignoramuses just going at each other. These shows, these cable news shows, for the most part, I mean, especially something like that, where you just have a panel of idiots arguing with each other. And we wonder why we have a country full of morons. When even the people who you would expect to know what they're talking about. I mean, hell, their contributors on cable news are probably getting paid a pretty penny. I'm sure each of them have, millions of followers or whatever across various social media. Probably got books out there and shit. And they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Anyway. All right, I need to speed this up a little bit. I've been talking longer than I should. I told you I have a lot of things to get to. And there's no way I'm getting to them all. But let me hit a couple more things before I get going. Here is an article about how Trump is having problems with the podcast bros. As you know, we got a real problem with young male morons in this country. And they get a lot of their news and information from stupid people like Joe Rogan and other podcast bros. Now, they find some of these people entertaining, I guess. By the way, I don't know why Joe Rogan appeals so much to the younger podcast bro. I mean, I guess I understand why, but he's not a young guy. All right. But anyway, so you got Joe Rogan. You got people like Theo Von. I mean, if you're getting your news and information from Joe Rogan and Theo Von, you're a moron. And you don't know what you're talking about. If you're an ignoramus, really, maybe you're not just flat out stupid, but you're certainly ignorant. And so many of these young guys who just these podcast bro guys in the podcast bro audience, this is where they get their news and information. And that's a real problem, because you don't know anything if that's the case. But the problem for Trump with the podcast bros is that a lot of them were never really part of the Trump cult. For some reason, cultural reasons, they gravitated towards Trump in the last election. But a lot of them were never really part of the Trump cult. They never really bought into the Trump personality cult stuff. But for whatever reason, they got activated to some degree in the last election, and they went kind of all in for Trump. But now, they're part of the crowd that effed around, and now they're finding out. And we've talked a lot about various groups of people who fucked around and now are finding out, or getting screwed by the very predictable consequences of having voted for Donald Trump. And, a lot of these podcast bros are coming to the realization that Donald Trump isn't what they thought Donald Trump was going to be. Now, there was no reason for them to have believed that Donald Trump was going to do the things that they believed he was going to do. But now that he is destroying everything, they realize, maybe we fucked up. And so he's having problems. He's losing many of the podcast bro types, and now their audiences are also beginning to wake up. And the polling data shows this, by the way. His support among young people, including young men, is dropping dramatically. So he's got that. That's a problem. More from Taco Trump. Remember, he threatened Russia with there'd be severe consequences if you don't do what I say, and if you don't bring an end to the war in Ukraine so that I can get a Nobel Peace Prize, there's going to be serious consequences. Well, the deadline Trump gave has come and gone, and Taco Trump is doing nothing about it, as we all expected. Oh, here's another one. Here's an article here. Go. DC grand jurors. Oh, the hell with this. Forget it. Let me just give you the gist here. Trump, Jeanine Pirro, and before her, Ed Martin, the U.S. attorneys in the District of Columbia, are bringing all these ridiculous cases. Like, for example, Jeanine Pirro tried to indict the guy who threw a sandwich. Indict him with a felony. And that was rejected by a D.C. grand jury. But the D.C. grand juries are rejecting a lot of these Trump DOJ cases, which is really notable because, having been a prosecutor myself, I can tell you it is really hard to not... I mean, it's really embarrassing. Let's put it this way. It's a colossal failure if you are trying to get an indictment and you don't. Now, lots of times, I will tell you, a lot of people don't understand this, but prosecutors oftentimes play games with grand juries because grand juries do whatever the hell prosecutors want them to do, for the most part. They're completely controlled by the prosecutors. The defendant has no right to be there. He has no right to present evidence, has no right for his lawyers to be there. There's no rules of evidence. There's no judge making evidentiary rulings. It's just the prosecutors and the grand jurors, and then whoever the prosecutors call as witnesses. And it's usually just law enforcement officers. It's usually just one. It's just the lead investigator on a case, and they come and they tell the grand jury about the case, and they say, and so we want you to indict this person, and usually, boom, they indict him, and that's it. I mean, it's really embarrassing if you go into a situation like that as a prosecutor that you completely control, and you could present only the information that you want to present and nothing that you don't. You're under no obligation to share exculpatory evidence with the grand jurors. Anyway, if you go into that situation that you completely control and you still don't get the grand jury to do what you want, that's fucking embarrassing. And time and time again, grand jurors in Washington, D.C. are saying no to the Justice Department, which is just delicious. Then we have this: U.S. manufacturing activity contracted in August for a 6th month. You know, Donald Trump was supposed to be a business genius, right? That's what we were led to believe. And that the economy was so good under Donald Trump and it was so bad under Joe Biden. We have got to elect Donald Trump to save us, to save the economy, because it's so bad. We need Donald Trump. And we're going to overlook the fact that he's a 34-time convicted felon. We're going to overlook the fact, going back to E. Jean Carroll, that he sexually abused a woman. Some would say rape, as the judge described it. Raped a woman. Defamed her. We're going to overlook that. We're going to overlook the fact that he went bankrupt like 6 times. We're going to believe the Apprentice image of Donald Trump as a business genius instead of the reality that he's a moron and went bankrupt 6 times, even though he had been given hundreds of millions of dollars literally from his father, bailed him out time and time again. We're going to overlook the fact that he incited a violent insurrection as part of a criminal conspiracy to overturn the results of an election. We're just gonna overlook all of that because the economy is so bad, even though it was the strongest in the world at the time of the election. The economy was so bad, and inflation was so bad, even though it was coming down at the time of the election. But everything was just so bad that we needed to elect a convicted fucking criminal to be president to save the economy. And the exact opposite has been happening. He has been destroying it. In fact, we got jobs numbers out today that show that, do I have it here? Oh yeah, I do have it here. U.S. job growth weakened sharply in August, while the unemployment rate rose to 4.3%. So the job market is getting worse, which is why he had to last month fire the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because hey, that's what authoritarians do. If the news is bad, then you kill the messenger or you fire her, and then you either don't put that information out at all anymore, or you hire a sycophant like maybe a January 6th insurrectionist, and you make that guy the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is what he's trying to do. I don't think that person has been confirmed yet or anything, has he? Anyway, that guy, literally a January 6th insurrectionist. Anyway, so he's destroying the economy. Unemployment rate is rising, and his tariffs were supposed to save the economy. They were supposed to specifically help American businesses and American manufacturing. But yet, U.S. manufacturing activity contracted in August for a 6th month. 6 months in a row, U.S. manufacturing output has decreased. The exact opposite of what Donald Trump said would happen. Maybe, and I'm just spitballing it here, maybe Donald Trump is a fucking idiot and doesn't know what he's doing. Could that be true? No, that couldn't possibly be true. Let's see what else here. Oh, here's an example of how stupid this fucking guy is. There's countless examples. I mean, I could just play you clips all day of stupid shit that this guy says. But I don't know, for some reason, I wanted to play this one. So here's Donald Trump the other day. This was in the Proof of Life press event in the Oval Office. Remember, there was speculation that this guy had fucking died or he was in a coma or something. And so they announced that Trump would be making an announcement from the Oval Office, and he turns up there surrounded by people. Basically, it was just to prove that he wasn't dead. And so here's one of the things he said. Here's a quick clip. Go.
Because without the United States, everything in the world would die. It's true. It's so.
What? What? What did this idiot say? Yes, you heard him correctly. Let me play it again. Here we go.
Because without the United States, everything in the world would die.
Without the United States, everything in the world would die. Okay, let's hear the rest of this.
It's true. It's so powerful. It's so big, and I made it really big in the first 4 years.
I made it really big. What drives me insane is that this man is clearly one of the stupidest human beings to ever have lived. And he is president of the United States. And everybody just pretends that he's not an idiot. Or at least the media. I mean, they cover him as if he's a normal president. Could you imagine if Joe Biden... I mean, I'm so sick of saying that. Imagine if Joe Biden said this. Imagine if Barack Obama... But I mean, it's true. No other president would get this treatment. So he says, let's just play this stupidity one more time. I'm not going to play the whole clip because you get the gist. But I just want to play this part of it again.
Because without the United States, everything in the world would die. It's true. It's so powerful. It's so big, and I made it really big.
I've made it really big. Now, he's not trying to be funny. He's being serious. Without the United States, everything in the world would die because the United States is really big, and he made it really big. So it seems to be that he's arguing, by extension, that without Donald Trump, everything in the world would die. Because the reason he's saying that without the United States, everything in the world would die is because it's so big. Well, then he proceeds to tell us that he's the one who made it so big in his first term. Therefore, by the transitive property, maybe, I don't know. Donald Trump, without Donald Trump, everything in the world would die. So here he is in his, hey, look at me, I'm not dead conference. He tells the media that without him, everything in the world would die. And that doesn't even get covered. He says things and posts things multiple times on a daily basis that are so stupid or so awful that if any other president said any of these things, that's all the media would talk about for days. And some of these things, they would get questioned. The White House would be barraged. I don't know. I'm tired. With questions from the media asking them what is wrong with him. Did he really mean that? Is there something wrong with his mental health? And why is he being... if he came out in his proof of life... This was his proof of life conference, remember. So he comes out. People think he's fucking dead. He comes out and he says this stupid shit. Why are they not asking, did Donald Trump have a stroke? Because he came out in his proof of life conference and he said some really stupid shit that no normal human being would say. Did he have a stroke? Is he not all there? Is it not time to invoke the 25th Amendment? Because this man clearly is not up to being president. Will you release medical records? Why haven't we gotten medical records? And by the way, where are the medical records from the assassination attempt? Why haven't we gotten those anymore? And why is it, while we're on that subject, can we please have the White House doctor come out here and give us an update on his miraculous ear healing? I mean, the point is, this guy's a fucking idiot, and we have this pathetic press who lets him get away with saying such stupid shit day after day after day. On top of the fact that he acts like a frickin' child. Like, it's embarrassing. Like, I did a video yesterday, and this is by no means one of the most childish things he does, but I just chose that one. He posted a video of Adam Schiff with this long neck, and he posted it. This was the president of the United States, like a child making fun of a political opponent, by manipulating a video to show that Adam Schiff has, because he likes to call him pencil neck, has this long pencil neck. And this is what the president of the United States, he posted an AI video of Chris Christie and J.B. Pritzker sumo wrestling. This is the president of the United States. It's an embarrassment. It's an absolute embarrassment. Can you imagine if any other president in American history did anything like this? Now, I understand there was an AI and all this kind of crap, but if he had done anything similar to that, the things that he says, just the childish things that he says, but then also the stupid things that he says. Without me, everything in the world would die? So the kangaroos in Australia would all be dead if it weren't for Donald Trump being president of the United States? I mean, it's just so freaking stupid. All right, moving on. Oh, and what does this stupidity get you? When you have an electorate in this country that is so breathtakingly stupid that they would elect someone like Donald Trump to be president, well, you get something like this. You get the state of Florida getting rid of vaccine mandates. That's right, I'm sure you've heard about this. So they're going to, no more vaccine mandates. Kids don't need to be vaccinated anymore to go to public schools in Florida. So you send your kid to school. You don't know if they're going to be exposed to measles, tuberculosis, whatever. That's. I guess this is part of the Make America Healthy again, right? Because that's what it's all about. Making America healthy. And what better way to make America healthy than by introducing, deadly diseases into the school by doing away with vaccine mandates. This is the dumbest fucking country. And I'll leave you with this. We'll stay on Florida for a minute. Remember how I reported on a federal court ordering the shutdown of Alligator Alcatraz? Well, that decision has been overturned by a federal appellate court. And so Alligator Alcatraz is back on track, and they're going to start filling it up again. And Meatball Ron DeSantis could not be happier. So he posted a video from the governor's office. He could not contain his excitement. So here's Meatball. There he is. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger, because we should see him in all his little rotund glory. Oh, he actually looks like he has lost some weight. But I don't care. I'm sticking with Meatball. Meatball Ron. What did he have to say? Look how happy he is. He actually, dare I say, he kind of looks like a pencil neck right there. Am I allowed to say that? No, only the president of the United States is allowed to say it. Okay, let's hear what Meatball Ron has to say. Okay, that's not working because I have the mute button on. Let's try this again. And Meatball, go.
The mission continues on immigration enforcement. The media was giddy that somehow Alligator Alcatraz was, quote, shutting down. And we told them that wasn't true.
The media was giddy, and now Meatball Ron is giddy. Look how happy he is.
There have been illegal aliens continuing to be there and being removed and returned to their home country. But they ran with the narrative because some leftist judge ruled implausibly.
Yeah, have you noticed that narrative is like one of their favorite words? They ran with the narrative. No, they reported the news. They reported the news that I didn't run with a narrative. I reported the news last week that a federal judge had ordered that Alligator Alcatraz be shut down. I wasn't running with a narrative. I was reporting on a court decision. Anyway, they just love that. For some reason, that's a word that has really taken hold inside the Trump cult. And if you can describe anything that the opposition is saying as a narrative, I guess that means it's not true. Narrative, I guess, narrative has come to mean a lie in the MAGA cult. So anyway, that's a buzzword. Just thought I'd point that out.
That somehow Florida wasn't allowed to use our own property to help the federal government in this important mission because they didn't do an environmental impact statement. Well, we said we would fight that. We said the mission would continue. And I'm pleased to say that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has just stayed that ruling and stayed the case. So Alligator Alcatraz is, in fact, like we've always said, open for business.
Well, good for you, Meatball. Now, you notice here, he's got an alligator head on his desk. Oh, I didn't notice this one before. Look at there on the right. That's an alligator skull. So he's got this, I don't know what this is made of. I don't know if this is a taxidermied alligator head or if it's just some sort of sculpture or something. Maybe one of the DeSantis kids made this for Daddy as a Father's Day present or so. I don't know. Does he have any kids? He has kids, right? I don't know how old they are. Look, I don't mean to bring the kids into that. My bad. I should. The kids are off limits. Anyway, then you have the alligator skull on the right. Does he always have the alligator shit on his desk behind him? Or is it just when he records these giddy little victory videos? I tend to think it's the latter, but I don't know. I will admit I don't regularly watch Meatball's propaganda videos. But you see how happy he is? He is so damn happy because the reason we have Alligator Alcatraz is for people like Ron DeSantis, and I'm not exactly sure. I know it wasn't Trump's idea. I thought it was DeSantis' idea. Someone told me yesterday that it was actually the Attorney General of Florida's idea. I don't even know who that is, to be perfectly honest with you. But whoever idea it is, if it wasn't Meatball's idea, he has definitely taken that, Alligator Alcatraz and run with it. He saw the political potential of Alligator Alcatraz to his presidential ambitions, and that's what it's all about. After all, this has nothing to do with helping the federal government, with the mission, as he describes it. The reason Meatball is doing, constructed Alligator Alcatraz, and why he's so damn giddy with excitement that it is back on track, is because he sees this as his ticket to the presidential nomination in 2028. By the way, for those of you who think that Donald Trump is going to be a candidate for president in 2028, he's not. And you know who else thinks that he's not going to be a candidate? Meatball Ron, right? That's why he's so excited about Alligator Alcatraz. He knows that this plays well with the Fox News audience. And if you win the Fox News audience, you'll win the Republican nomination for president. And that's what this is about. Alligator Alcatraz gives him everything he needs. It gives him the ability to come on to Fox News all the time, to update him on Alligator Alcatraz. He could talk about all the cruelty that they're inflicting upon the, these poor migrants in Alligator Alcatraz, or these evil illegal aliens that we're all supposed to be afraid of. And that's what it's all about for Meatball Ron. Entertaining the cult. Performative cruelty. Because that's what they like. And this, keeping Alligator Alcatraz open, the reason he's so damn giddy is because it'll keep allowing him to go on Fox News whenever he wants to report on the abuses that he's inflicting on the illegal aliens in Alligator Alcatraz. This gives him the ability to keep doing what you need to do to get the Republican nomination, and that is go on Fox News and shovel shit to morons. Well, congratulations, Meatball Ron. You did it. Anyway, that's going to have to do it for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.